Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Labria Lee Holt, and I am the National African American Constituency Director for AIPAC. Thank you. I recently took on that role, actually, it was this conference. Previously, I was working out in the regions across the country, and I have the honor and privilege of working with some of the best and brightest Black leaders from across the country. And I am sitting next to one who I have the honor of introducing, who is a leader who we all respect so very much for the tremendous amount of work that she does in Congress. So I'm gonna read a little bit about her background, but I always think it's better when you hear about a person from themselves. So I'm gonna share some words and then ask the Congresswoman to tell us a little bit about her path to leadership. It's my honor to welcome Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, who's a native of Michigan, 14th District, where she covers Detroit area. She serves as a co-chair of the Bipartisan Congressional Caucus on Women's Issues and the second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, which I will have you to know is the strongest it's ever been, with 55 members in a very strong bloc. Which I'm sure I will have her share a bit about today. She also serves on the House Appropriations Committee, serving on the Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, Subcommittee on Government Operation, Subcommittee on National Security. Before joining Congress, she was elected mayor of the city of Southfield in 2001, becoming the first African American and the first woman to serve as mayor. I want to thank you. You all beat me to it. Thank you for helping me extend a warm welcome to Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence. And I would love to have you start off just sharing a little bit about your journey to leadership before we dive in.
I want to thank everyone for being here today. We have been given, our generation, the fact that we're alive in 2020, the responsibility of leadership, of writing history for all the things that are happening not only in our United States but in the world. I want you to know that I was raised by my grandparents. My mom died when I was 3, who instilled upon me there was absolutely nothing that I couldn't do. For people who don't understand that when you grow up during the civil rights movement, where there was so much turmoil in the world and in your communities, to have someone say you deserve to sit at any table and you have the right to walk through any door. She had 3 criteria: if you work hard, get your education, and keep your faith in God, there's absolutely nothing that can stop you. Now, with that being said, she told me something else. She said, Brenda, in this world, being a Black woman in America, you're going to spend the majority of your life forgiving people. She said, because Brenda, hatred is something that is ignorance. And she said, you have to educate people and forgive them. She said, Brenda, the forgiveness is extremely challenging. She said, but if you don't, you will consume that hate and it will have an impact on you. And so that has been my tool throughout life. The more resistance I find in my way, the harder I fight through it. I'm so glad to be here today and to work with AIPAC. So one of the great things that I have is that I had the opportunity to serve in the city of Southfield, Michigan. And for those of you who don't know, yay, Southfield. For those of you who don't know, there is this hub of the Jewish community in the state of Michigan. And from being mayor, I was introduced, embraced, and educated about the Jewish community. In my community, when I took over, it was 30% African American and 70% white. And so the Jewish community embraced me when I ran and was very supportive, and one of the reasons why I was elected the mayor. So not only did I have the responsibility in my oath of office to look after major educational institutions, one of the largest Jewish schools, one of the largest synagogues that seat 5,000, also to protect the small businesses and small synagogues that were part of our community. To see my neighbors walking, to live next door and seeing all this activity during the Passover and trying to understand what are you all doing, and to be embraced and to step into that. At one point we had the Black Jewish dialogue where Black families and Jewish families would open up their homes, and we would invite people in to talk about each other and our cultures to develop a stronger relationship. So with that, I now have this great opportunity to represent multiple cities and the Jewish Vocational Center, the Jewish Community Centers, the Jewish News, all of those just tentacles of the Jewish community is my responsibility. So I'm so honored to be here. I was sharing with one of the young ladies who escorted me in that I have not missed a AIPAC convention since I have been in Congress, and also attended when I was mayor. So it's an honor to be here today.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for opening up with your story around how you were raised and the values that your mom and your family, losing your mom early, your family instilled in you. That theme of our shared values, that we talk around, and the shared values that you started to touch on with the Jewish community. I would love to hear just your thoughts on what those shared values of working hard and, fighting against the odds, what that means for you in your leadership capacity.
So one of the things that I really want to talk to you all about, since I've been in Congress, I've had multiple trips to Israel. Just recently, I was in Israel in November of last year. It was an all-women caucus that went to Israel. So I am chair of the Women's Caucus, and it was just really powerful because I love you guys. But when women get together, things that are a priority for us, and I will tell you, if we could take over for about a month, we could probably figure out a peace solution, because we would not tolerate a lot of the things that are happening now. But the thing that is really, really important is that we looked at gender equality. We looked at economic development. We looked at all of those things that are happening and some of the challenges that we have in the United States and some that Israel have and some Israel's doing a better job at. But you heard my story about my local political service, and now I'm in Congress. And one of the things that I uniquely learned, there is a Holocaust museum in my district for the state of Michigan, is that we have so many shared stories. The journey through oppression, the impact it had on us and our lack of tolerance for discrimination, the lack of impatience, and the brunt of oppression and discrimination that's directed at us for nothing more than just being Jewish or Black. And so when we go through Black History Month and we go through the other things to observe and recognize the history of Black America, almost always the Jewish community was locked arms with us, literally. If it wasn't marching with us, giving their lives, representing us on a legal perspective when we couldn't, selling a home to us when the deed said that we could not buy a house. It is powerful for me to grow up a black woman in America and be so entwined in the Jewish community to hear our shared stories. And as a result of that, I started the Black Jewish Caucus. Good to see you.
Yes, which I would love for you to share a little bit about that. That was going to be my next question. Right now, we live in a time where we're not always getting out of our silos.
Yeah.
And we know that it's very important, and it's always been important for our communities to work together. And you took a lead on that.
Yes.
I'd love for you to share what your motivations, how you got there, and really what your goals are with the Black and Jewish Caucus.
I think it's very appropriate here at AIPAC for me to be very honest with you. I was very concerned how the relationship with Israel and the United States, that there appeared to be an agenda to politicize that, to make it a Democratic or Republican issue, to say that if I belong to a certain party, I love Israel. If I don't, I don't love Israel. And then just to see the rise in hate crimes over the last couple of years, it is so troubling. In the black community, we said we thought we had overcome. We do all the right things to make sure that we remember our history. The Jewish community, you know, you have been through so much, and you have reached a point, we thought, where anti-Semitic and those who hate us just because of who we are, that we have transitioned through that. But here we are in 2020 confronting almost an institutional organization of hate. And I asked the members of Congress who are black or Jewish, I said, let's send a message of unity. Let's come together with our shared history. Let's come together with something that bonds us that no other ethnic group in America is going through, and that is that when you go to your synagogue, you're not hiding under a rock or trying to assimilate. You are proud of your heritage and your culture. And being an African American, I can't hide who I am. And so it seems to be this direct sense of needing to suppress or to exercise hate against our groups. And if we come together, history showed us very clearly that when we locked arms, when we fought together, we were actually able to transform civil rights and respect and reduce crime in America.
We are all here, all of us here are here to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship.
Yeah.
And we know that each and every one of us play a different part. My question to you, and it's actually a question I received during another session that where I was moderating a panel, was there was this great young professional Jewish pro-Israel advocate who asked, how can I be more of a partner? And how can we come together more to support advancing the U.S.-Israel relationship and making it feel really local? And so now that I have you here, because we didn't have a Congress member on that one, I would love to see if you have any thoughts on or tips on ways that we can continue to strengthen our bonds with one another back home to advance the U.S.-Israel relationship and the support for members like yourself.
So I would like to take the privilege of talking from the perch of being a member of Congress. I want you to know I was a little disturbed because I was walking down the hall, the walkway here. I said, that looks like the Iron Dome. Why is it here? Because it has work to do. But I'm sure there's a reason. Somebody's going to answer that for me. I sit on appropriations, and to ensure that we are funding the defense of Israel, that we do not allow it to become a politicized discussion. That's something that we can do. Um, it's it's so unfortunate. I want to share a very impactful event that just recently happened to me. I was in Germany, and there is a museum, the Museum of Socialists, the Socialist Museum, and it talked about the how democracy was destroyed and the build of the communists and things that they did. They demonized media. They made free media as something you shouldn't listen to. There were these big, massive rallies. There were the minimizing of certain people in society, that these people are not equal or of the same value as us. And also, it was that just ticking away at democracy. So, what can we do? I know for a fact, being in Israel so many times, sitting in a room toe to toe, nose to nose with Netanyahu, sharing my belief that we need peace and we need a two-state solution, sitting there talking to the Palestinian representatives and saying you can't say that you want peace when you allow someone who is carrying an agenda that's anti-peace, that represent you and your people, just having these discussions. But we have a responsibility never to give up, never to stop the conversations. And I'm proud to say that I'm here today. I will continue to come because I believe the dialogue, when a mentor of mine, I'm getting way too personal here, but a mentor of mine, I've been married 47 years. So any of you who've been married know that marriage is a commitment that you have to work on constantly. So I was pretty teed off at my husband at this point. So I'm talking to a mentor of mine. I go like, I don't know if this is going to work out. And he was kind of put back. He said, why would you say that? I said, I don't want to go into detail, but I'm just frustrated. He said, well, I'm going to give you just one piece of advice. Don't stop talking. Because when you stop talking, the relationship starts to die. He said that conversation, it has to be engaging, not disrespectful, calling people names, but you have to keep talking. And I'm going to say that about Israel and the United States. We have to stay at the table. And right now, we aren't having real conversations. I'm concerned about that. But we cannot, a conversation, if you stay at the table, it doesn't mean that only one side get in the room and have a conversation. It means that you have it together. You air your differences. You talk about what does peace look like? How do we get there? And for us to support Israel, and for me, peace for Israel, I must defend her and make sure that she's safe. I have to make sure that we are promoting an environment where there is dialogue, and that as much as possible ensure that there is issues that something that's really important to me is water in Israel. Water in Israel is a really big issue for those of you who've been there and know. I mean, if we could figure out the water thing, that would be a huge step. The other thing are settlements, because I see so many opportunities when I travel to Israel where there are people coming together who are so committed. Yes, there are those who want to demonize the Palestinians or demonize Israel, but there are people who really, right now, who are working together and know the power of those two countries having peace and moving forward.
You. And while you're reflecting on Israel, I would love, since you just went recently again, and this time it was focused from the lens as a woman and looking into some of those issues, is there anything that stood out that was memorable to you, an experience that you had that you brought back, or a place that you visit that you could share with us?
So I wanted to, forgive me, I'm going over my itinerary because I go so many places. I'm trying to remember where I
And the itineraries are always very busy. So
we met with the gay community in Israel, and I was kind of surprised of how progressive that Israel is for respecting sexual equality. We spoke to a number of groups, but one of the things, are you familiar with Save a Child's Heart? It's at the Woodson Medical Center, where you had doctors who are working on children not because they're Israeli, not because they're Palestinian, but because they're children. And that's what I mean when you see these examples of here in this emergency room, recovery room, you'll see a Palestinian woman here, and you'll see a Israeli woman, and you'll see Palestinian and Israeli doctors working there. It is phenomenal. That was very touching to me. So here you are, you have a Muslim family who need a different diet, sitting next to her child recovering, and then next to it you'll see an Israeli child. My goodness, if we can reduce things to being a human being and get off of our political agendas, we can move forward. That was something that really was eye-opening. And, they don't get paid a lot of money like they do in the United States to be a doctor in this hospital, and they were in the middle of a campaign to raise additional money. So that, to me, was one of the things, and that's what happens when you put women in the room. We went in there and we saw these mothers who just want their child to live and to have a place to go where they weren't saying, oh, you're not Jewish, or you're not, you're a Palestinian. It is about doing what's right as a human being.
thanks for sharing that. That is a very special place. I've been fortunate to visit there, and I think there are some others here who have as well. While we have you here, I think it's only appropriate that you share a little bit about the Congressional Black Caucus. In my capacity doing outreach for AIPAC, we spend a lot of time focused on the Congressional Black Caucus, and we were thrilled to see majority of the caucus supporting the anti-BDS, which I don't know if a lot of people were aware of, because the noise would suggest otherwise. When we see that
That's why we have to stop politicizing
a lot of support.
Yes.
So thank you for your support, and thank the caucus for that support. I think it would be helpful, though, to hear from you what some of the priorities are for the caucus. We spend so much time focused on the pro-Israel relationship and U.S.-Israel strategy that I think it's important that we're also aware of what are some of the kitchen table issues that the Congressional Black Caucus is focused on.
So the Black Caucus, we sometimes call ourselves the conscience of Congress, because we are confronted with so many human rights and civil rights issues still today in 2020. And so we have on our table criminal justice reform is a huge issue. educational reform. And I just want to share a story with you why our relationship is needed. And I shared this back home. When I was mayor, the city of Southfield, and I speak very honest, so if y'all get squirmish, just get over it. So because our city is majority African American and our white community is Jewish, we have very little diversity because most of my Jewish family go to Jewish schools because we have a whole big selection in Southfield. Some of the most amazing schools you ever want to see. I went to a Jewish school and walked in, and it was yoga time for the kindergartners. They could do the doggy down and all that other stuff. It was amazing, and they were meditating kindergartens. It was just amazing. But what I challenge the synagogue is that you are walking past all of these places of education. And I was very personally concerned because the educational outcomes in the schools that's right next sometimes to your synagogue are not where they should be. I challenge them, if you really do care, and I know you do because there's so many educators in the Jewish community, I said, why don't you tutor and say in our synagogue community, while these are not the schools for our children, we want them to be number one. So start tutoring. And I had some retired, and they're still going up there and getting in their rocking chairs. Some retired teachers, they go and they read and they mentor in reading. And so it's a way that we can work together to support each other. Educational outcomes. I had a young man that I mentor who we were together, and I was concerned about a nephew of mine who was kind of losing his way, and I was so concerned that he wasn't going to finish high school. And he looked at me, he said, I don't have a single friend that didn't graduate from high school and go to college. I said, what? He said, I'm sitting here trying to figure that out. What does that even look like? It's not like it's an option. And so, while it broke my heart, I told him, I said, this is something we deal with in the black community. And there's so many issues that go into why black children are not achieving academically. And I'm one of those, my grandmother was never an option. I never even could have thought of not finishing high school. I don't know if I would still be sitting here if I didn't, because I wouldn't be alive. But I must transform the black community through education. Criminal justice reform. Why is it that the majority of people who are in prison are people who are black and brown people? It's something wrong in our justice system. I don't care how you want to squeeze it, pat it, write it out. It's something wrong. In Iowa, I think we are like 4 or 5% of the population, and we're over 40% of the imprisoned, incarcerated population. Something wrong with that. So on the ground, those things that we can work together on, and we have in the past, and I said this too, you know how we said we have overcome and we bypassed those things? The Jewish community wasn't asked and recruited to fight for civil rights. They showed up because it was a core value that we want civil rights in America to be for all people. The Jewish community knows what it felt like to be oppressed and to go through that. And so why is it today we have to ask? Why did I have to ask for the Jewish community to show up again? I know you will if I ask. But again, coming together collectively on one agenda of human rights, and knowing that collectively, those of us who are hate crime victims, the anti-Semitic crimes that are happening are deplorable. Our places of worship where we're sitting targets, we are going to have to work together. And I really don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. And please, can we move forward on an agenda that, because the Black Jewish Caucus, I purposely ensure that we have Republicans and Democrats. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of African Americans in the Republican Party, nor Jewish. So our caucus is majority Democrat, and you can do whatever you want with that, but that's a fact. But we did get the Republicans and Democrats on both sides.
Well, thank you. And in that, I want to make sure that I leave a couple of minutes for Q&A. If anybody wants to come up, we do have a microphone here where we can help if you have a question. But I want to thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your continued leadership, for all the things that we know that you will do for this movement going forward in the future.
I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you for your leadership. I don't know why she's the designated interviewee of mine, but you always do such a great job. But again, we must keep talking. When we get silent on issues, other things happen. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to keep working together with you. You can go right there.
Thank you both for being here this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You mentioned, trying to find Jewish Republicans. If you go to my congregation, you can find quite a lot. But I happen to be a Democrat, and my concern is what's going on with our party, but specifically in the presidential elections, what's coming up. I sort of see it in November. You could have two ideological extremes on the Republican end and on the Democratic end running against each other. And
Yes.
again, and my concerns of what that would mean for Israel and possibly the Jewish vote. I would have a very hard time if it came down to a Sanders-Trump election wanting to vote all together.
So I wish I could fix that. Our democracy is painful. We do have the process that we go through. A lot of discussion now is what happens at the convention. If we have Bernie Sanders as our top, will we have multiple votes? But we're going to work through this. Don't give up hope. This is a great country, and we are not naive. One of the reasons why I say keep talking, why would you not come to an event like this and have a conversation in what you believe in? Because if you keep away, you can nurture a belief that isn't always true. I'm always confronted with information and even some of my own personal convictions when I go in places that I typically won't agree with everything you're doing. And sometimes I just want to be there to tell you how I feel about it. But I'm a firm believer at entering the room, and that's how we change things. But don't give up hope, and please stay engaged.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you firstly for coming and having this conversation today, which to me is so important. The relationship between the Jewish community and the African American community goes back a long time.
Long way.
Jewish people marched at Selma,
Yes.
and the support between the two groups is incredible. Without putting you on the spot, I was curious to know what the Black Caucus's position is on the expansion of the settlements that are being proposed in Israel at the moment, and is that a challenging area for the Black Caucus?
It absolutely is a challenging one. Expansion of settlements. I can't speak for the Black Caucus because we haven't put out a statement. I can speak for me being a member and on the executive board of the Black Caucus is that how do you have a conversation about peace and bringing people together when you're continuing the settlements? And I had this personal conversation with Netanyahu The water and the settlements are the two issues. If we could just say no more settlements, this is Brenda Lawrence speaking, no more settlements. We have the ones we have, okay? Let's continue with that. But we have to settle the water, and if you're serious about it, you stop expanding. So that's the way I feel.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
In the conversation about BDS, recognizing what the word boycott evokes in the African American community, and recognizing that the bridge between the African American community and the Jewish community is about civil rights,
Yes.
how do you suggest we frame that conversation? Because we can't change the name of the movement, and that seems to be one of the sticking points in some of the lack of consensus. And how do you suggest we change that conversation when the BDS movement is positioned as a human rights issue, when that's not what its fundamental underlying agenda is, and yet we can't change the name of the organization of the movement?
So you need to understand that the way that they push to oppress the black community is that they boycotted us, and we boycotted them to send a message. And so when you talk about, when you say boycott, it does evoke some very, very strong emotions. We got to call it something else or define it better. But as you saw, we did get a large number because we understood the intent of it, but some people could not get past that. So again, let's stay at the table and keep working on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh my goodness, I'm so
And-
excited to see
Oh,
you.
yes.
Can you get it? Oh wow, you're a pro.
What would you say was your biggest milestone and struggle of like your journey to leadership?
Oh wow, what is your name?
My name is Ellie.
Ellie, and how old are you?
I'm 11.
11. Ellie, thank you so much. You're amazing. You're definitely going to be a leader.
Thank you.
Ellie, one of the greatest challenges is when people ignore you or look over you because for me, because I was a woman or because I was African American. When I say I was the first woman and first African American to become mayor, I literally had someone say, it was a white man who said, "Oh, you'll never get elected mayor because every city that's had a black mayor became a ghetto." And then he walked away. But the greatest thing is to not allow negative noise and what people say about you. Don't consume that and make it into who you are. I knew for a fact, any city that I was mayor of, I was not going to allow it to deteriorate. I knew I had the strength and I believed enough in myself. And so a lot of times, when you're a girl, you can be in a meeting and they won't even answer you or ignore you or laugh at you if you have a question. And, I have sayings that I say to myself, and I'll just say, "Keep laughing, baby, because you know what? You're going to have to deal with me." Or I'll say, "Watch my smoke." Or I'll wake up in the morning and say, "I know today I'm going to have to fight, and I'm ready for it, and I'm going to win." And so it's talking to yourself and believing in yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
As a pro-Israel congressperson, and with a philosophy, which I think is a wonderful philosophy, of emphasizing dialogue and remaining at the table when you have disagreements or frustration with family members or colleagues, what kind of dialogue or how are you at the table with certain colleagues of yours in the House of Representatives in your party who some of us may consider to be strongly anti-Israel, if not anti-Semitic?
There's some of my colleagues, as you know, very much on the record with their position. You have to learn to respect someone's position, But sometimes it's not so much arguing with them about it, but showing them the results of it, being strong in your conviction. Yes, I ask the question sometimes, why do you feel that way? Sometimes it's based on years and years of stereotypes and things that they have embraced, and they're just not, if we're not two people who understand, sometimes it's a journey. And so to keep showing through example the power of coming together, getting the correct information, and just stay at it. Because when you start hating them and saying, you're an idiot and whatever, it allows them to stay in that place. And so to continue to do what's right. And, as my grandmother used to say, right will kick wrong. Okay, let's get this right. Right will kick wrong in the butt every day. Okay. I do want you all to know, I said I've been married 47 years. I love my husband. We kept talking. We're still married. That's for the record. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
My name is Martina Smith, and I am part of the African American delegacy with AIPAC under Labria's leadership. So one of the questions, just kind of for the consensus of our group, is that we want to be able to better understand how can we support you in your efforts. I am also from the Midwest. I'm from Chicago. But how can we support you in your efforts, as well as kind of the broader effort of also helping the Jewish community?
So one of the things, when we have events, it was overwhelming. When we kicked off the Black Jewish Caucus, we packed out the room. I had the largest number of members showing up. The room was elbow to elbow. So many people came out. We're going to have a hearing on hate crimes in America, take members of Congress to New York. We're going to have a Black Jewish Seder. We're going to have a Juneteenth event. We're going to continue to have events, and when you hear about them, and if you need us to come to your part of this country, I'll be willing to get the members together to come out and have a dialogue so we can continue to grow this. But also, and it sounds selfish, but you have to support us who are on the ground fighting this fight. It means something to in this environment. Some of us are targeted because of our beliefs. You think you get it, well, some of them will say, well, we're going to run somebody against you. So to be as strong as we can as members of Congress who believe in the power of Black-Jewish relationships means a lot. Thank you. I think that's
Please
the
do
last
keep
one.
us informed.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Well, please help me thank the Congresswoman for her
Thank you
time,
all.
her
Thank you.
leadership.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.